All right, we are live this week on the SEO Leadership webinar. We have such an amazing guest this week. We're so excited to welcome the SEO Director of CBS News, Maddie Shepherd. Maddie just came back from holiday right now, so we're all very jealous of her. But Maddie, thank you so much for coming on. How are you keeping?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here and to chat with y'all. I am good. I've had a 3-day work week, and I've been looking forward to this for a while. So keeping good. Thank you. How are you?
Well, we're good. We didn't have a holiday yet, but and did a 5-day work week. But yeah, no, we are very excited to sort of dive into a discussion today with you on all things SEO career progression wise. So to kick things off, if we could just ask you a quick backstory on your career progression, how you got into SEO and how you got to the role that you are at now.
Yeah, so I learned about SEO through my first full-time role that started out as an internship. I worked at a fintech startup called Fundera that was acquired by NerdWallet after I left. But I started as a communications intern and then went full-time as a staff writer, which was entirely lead gen, SEO driven content. So through that role, I learned a lot about SEO through writing and a lot of on-page best practices. And then I gradually grew to take on more of the analytics, more of the strategy, workflow shaping stuff. And from there, I realized I really wanted to have my hands in media more, kind of creating content for content's sake. And I did a bit of freelance writing, but also eventually transitioned into news through a role at the New York Post. And then from there, it was all news. I find it's a great combination of exciting, but also you're sticking to really reliable best practices. You're not necessarily the one with the byline on the post breaking the news. So that led me here via NBCUniversal, working with the local teams there. And now I'm at CBS, working with both local and national teams, just working across content SEO, like on-page stuff, strategy, technical, you name it, runs the gamut. Yeah, that's the short version.
Brilliant. And Maddie, you mentioned at the start there, obviously you got into it through an internship.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have advice? Because obviously there's a lot of people that come to us with maybe don't have any years experience in SEO, but there's something that they're really keen on and they want to get in. Do you have any advice to people on how to sort of land an internship? Any sort of things that they could do to add to their CV that might help them land an internship when they're applying to it?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, and I think this will probably be a theme throughout this conversation, I think it's true that SEO requires so many different skills that aren't necessarily SEO skills. Like, for instance, writing, copywriting, content writing, developing. If you're a developer, that's a great in for an SEO internship or an SEO full-time role. I think just emphasizing the connection between those things. I'm a great writer, and that means great click-through rate. I can write a really good headline, so that means great click-through rate from the SERPs. I'm a developer, which means I know how to make a page less heavy and perform better. So just kind of creating that not so dotted line between the skills you already have and how they can be really beneficial for an SEO team.
Excellent. And then on top of that, sorry, go ahead.
I actually have a question in regards to just you coming from a writer's background and moving into the news space at the moment. It's always been such an interesting journey watching news move from previously printed publishing to now an online space. And I was dying to ask for your input on it. I don't know if I'm not sure if you were experiencing that transition or if you have any idea of how does SEO play into the news space at the moment? Are they placing a lot of emphasis on it? Is it very competitive? yeah, what are your sort of thoughts on it?
I think it really depends newsroom to newsroom. I think for the most part, the biggest players have realized how important it is, given just the steady decline in Facebook referrals and social referrals generally. I would say it's just for any major newsroom, there is more than likely an emphasis on SEO for that reason. I have had a really great experience like working with print journalists and kind of convincing them why SEO is important. And I think, listening to them first and foremost and hearing what is important to them and then translating your kind of pitch on SEO into a language that they might better understand is really helpful. I know that there's a lot of jargon in SEO, so obviously avoiding anything like EEAT without explaining it, but also just seeing what motivates them and then going from there, I've found really helpful.
Awesome. Cool.
Maddie, there's a sort of a common theme or sort of idea that agency life is a lot sort of faster paced than in-house roles and stuff like that. But I think it's quite different when you're working in the news, because obviously you don't have time to plan huge sort of content strategies. There's stories that you have to post there and then, like as it happens. How do you sort of adapt to that sort of fast-paced environment, and how do you ensure that? Is there like a process that goes through to make sure, first of all, the story's legit? There's no, because obviously there's a lot of like fake news and stuff like there, and obviously there's a bit of red tape and stuff like that as well. What's the sort of process, and how difficult is that to sort of incorporate into your SEO strategy?
Yeah, I think it a lot of the time it depends whether or not like a pitch is coming from me. So maybe I'll spot something in Google Trends. I will have to do a bit of digging so I can make sure that it's like something that they can actually pursue. But I think I do a lot of due diligence before I actually send a pitch, just to make sure that like when I'm pitching something, they're really listening. I really want a high success rate there. That said, if there's breaking news, a lot of the time my news team has already heard about it, and they're going through the process of working with many newsrooms like have teams that do the vetting for them. They're the go-to sources for clearing that and making sure everything's solid. There are different processes from newsroom to newsroom, and it will just depend on where you land. But I often, more related to SEO, we often come to like, oh, we need this word in the headline, but it's not actually accurate. Google has made lots of changes in the past decade. Luckily, one of them is they're better at recognizing synonyms. So I find if I search this inaccurate keyword, I still find headlines with the accurate word that is the synonym or close synonyms. So yeah, it's really interesting in a newsroom kind of incorporating all the different, the style guide, the standards, and then taking in SEO, taking in the keywords, taking in the best practices, and trying to find that happy medium. And then, of course, really choosing your battles when they matter the most.
Excellent. And then, obviously, as a director, you're obviously leading the team and stuff like that. When you're sort of hiring yourself for newsrooms, do you prefer people that come from an agency background where it is slightly more faster paced, or does it just depend on sort of the individual?
Yeah, so my current role, I don't yet have any direct reports, but in my previous role I did. And when I was hiring for entry-level SEO roles, I really, there wasn't a particular background I was looking for. It was more behavioral stuff, honestly, like really just can they apply feedback? Can they pivot if something's not working? And do they have a mind for data? I think that's a big one. Oftentimes there will be people with editorial backgrounds that clearly have a mind for data, and they I think they're really well suited for an SEO role as a result. So I don't know if there's a particular background there, but just showing that you know how to see if something's working and then roll with it, kind of double down on what's working and what isn't, is I think a great way to help make yourself stand out.
Awesome. You spoke about how Google's naturally always changing, and with SEO, it's always changing. But as with the news, it's always updating, and there's constantly breaking news coming out. I can imagine that is a very high stress environment, or it can potentially become one. How do you manage the stress, especially with your team? And do you have ways to sort of mitigate when to stress out with all of the updates that come, I guess, from both sides?
Yeah, I think naturally think there's like a certain level of stress that might be helpful as long as you know how to like manage it and like funnel it into something productive. But I have found semi-recently, all of the Google updates have made it necessary, just like finding small little routines outside of work that make it easier for you to let it roll off your back if traffic's down. For instance, mine is just taking a little walk in the morning before I start work. It's really simple and it sounds really like how could that change your outlook so much, but that is really something that has made all of the breaking news and all of the algorithm updates and the month-long rollouts of algorithm updates really much easier to take in stride. And I think ultimately just knowing that if traffic's down, I will communicate. Like, I know how to communicate that. I've kind of been through that before. And really the most important thing is how you react. Just keeping that in mind. Like, there are things out of your control, but the thing that you can control is how you react.
And then just on that, when you first experienced something like the traffic being down, do you have any advice to juniors that may experience that, or be put in a position where they've just got they've just been promoted, or they're in a new role or in a new company and they experience that for the first time? Were there any sort of initial thoughts, like, I guess, looking back in hindsight, that you wish you would have known?
Yeah, I think that key point about communication, making it clear, like, traffic's down because of, figuring out, diagnosing the reason, whether it is an algorithm update or something technical on the site side. Figuring it out, diagnosing it, communicating, hey, traffic is down for XYZ reasons, and then making a really solid game plan. So this happened, it stinks, but here's how we're going to fix it. And even if that game plan is like a year long, I think just showing that you're going to do something about it really helps not only show the hires up that we're aware and it's not going to be like this forever, hopefully, but also it helps with that communication part and kind of the it keeps people off your back in some ways too. Just like showing like, hey, we're working on this. And then also I find, again, that's a great way to manage stress of like, okay, this is happening, it's out of my control, but what I can control is how I react and how I move forward, and I'm doing everything I can in that capacity.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Going back through your sort of career journey, obviously you went from New York Post into NBC. Can you talk us through that sort of transition to obviously like a big sort of career move? And was there any sort of advice or tips you can give to people who are going through something similar, that just to help you maybe hit the ground running or sort of fit into the team sort of a lot easier?
Yeah, I would say just like having as many one-on-one conversations as possible, and not having, for the first few weeks, having that be your goal, just like talking to people, listening to them, asking them questions, especially big stakeholders who you'll be working with or who you need to work with well for the role. Um, I would say just ask them questions. What are their main motivators? What are their key metrics that they use to measure success? That way, you'll be able to keep that in the back of your mind when you're working with them, or if you're pitching a technical fix or a big technical change. If you're pitching just an article on a day-to-day basis, you can kind of start to build that trust, but then also know where they're coming from and what motivates them the most, so that you can frame your pitch, whatever it might be, towards that.
Excellent.
I noticed that you also mentioned that you were working as a freelance writer for a while as well. I love asking SEOs on the webinar what they found of importance from their side projects or their freelance work. I noticed that in a particular time, when you were a freelance writer just before moving into New York Post, if that's correct, or just after. How did you find sort of the benefits of working in the freelance space and then migrating back into your new role?
Yeah, I think I worked with a lot of great editors who helped me improve my writing, which I really appreciated. And I still apply those learnings every day when I'm, writing a debrief report from a project, or even writing a ticket or a ticket request. I would also say, it helped me understand what freelancers go through. So if I'm working with a freelancer in the future, I know pretty solidly like best practices and how to keep them happy and eager to continue working with a given in-house team. Yeah.
And I guess this question can sort of be flipped on both sides, but how do you have any tips to best presenting a side project to someone that's applying for a role? Or alternatively, what would you look for in a site if someone's presenting a portfolio to you?
I think any side project that has anything to do with the role is like really exciting. It shows initiative, and it shows passion. It shows like excitement for the work, and it also shows eagerness to learn. I think that like just side projects generally are great testing grounds for trying new things, experimenting, and I think that in and of itself inherently shows like a data focused mindset too. So maybe just emphasizing those things, figuring out small concrete details that illustrate that that's the case, I think would be awesome for interviewing.
Cool. And then just you also mentioned on the aspect of communication, I wanted to dig in a little bit deeper on communicating to higher ups, especially when you moved into your senior SEO manager position and now into the SEO director role. Do you have any tips to SEOs that are moving into similar positions that need to master communication effectively, especially as you mentioned to people that may not understand EAT? Yeah, how did you sort of go about it? Were there any bottlenecks that you experienced? And yeah, do you have any advice?
Oh yeah, it's always a work in progress, I think, and it just depends on who the leadership is. I think ultimately, like going back to that, what I keep mentioning, like understanding what motivates the leadership. Oftentimes, it's the business, like the money earned, the money spent. So figuring out, I think, really specifically figuring out how to connect your work to dollars and cents is a great way to show success. So if you already have it set up, great. Have like a refreshing dashboard, or you can give a quick, like give an easy monthly update that shows that impact and that connection to the dollars and cents. If you don't already have it set up, find the people who do set up dashboards and see how you can get that metric and that easy to refresh data. And yeah, I would say just find out what motivates any given business leader who you really want to communicate well with, and go. And I also think just if when in doubt, asking them, say like, why does my role exist? Why was I promoted, etc. What do you want to see from me, and how can I keep you updated on progress? Would be a great way to go about it.
Did you have any particular managers or mentors that I guess helped you throughout the years when you were I guess moving from like New York Post to NBC and CBS? And were there any particular traits that they had that helped you?
Oh, I've had so many managers that have helped me and are just like inspirations generally, like for leadership and how to be a good manager. I think one thing that really stands out to me, one trait that really stands out to me when I think of the most effective leaders I've worked for is just like having your team's back in a way. There's a lot that is out of SEO's control. So understanding that, but also creating a sense of accountability, having their back when there's something that's out of their control, but then helping them to see what they can do to improve the situation. So finding that healthy balance between support, like unending support, but then also a way of like creating like kind of gentle accountability to like get them to the place where they are working on something that they can control, and that helps them see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. If it's, for example, like getting hit by an algorithm update, understanding that this isn't your fault, but then kind of working to create a plan to make the reality different, I guess.
Brilliant. And Maddie, obviously communication is extremely important. How quick or how difficult or easy did you find when you became to have sort of direct reports, your communication style? Did you have to like adapt it to certain people, or did you find like a way that sort of works best for you or your team?
Yeah, this is still kind of new for me. I've managed people who I found it very easy to communicate with. The one thing that I just as a manager had to learn is just how to be more direct. I think that it's not in my nature to be direct, but it is also not a benefit to somebody if they're not getting feedback for them to work on. So learning how to communicate constructive feedback more directly and in a way that is very actionable is something that I had to learn and constantly improving on or working on improving.
Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome with the taking on the senior SEO manager or SEO director roles?
That is a funny question. I joke that like my parents were way too supportive for me to have imposter syndrome. I feel very, very grateful. They always like told me that I could run a small country from the age of like 5. So I'm really grateful for that, and I feel very lucky that's the case. And there will be moments where I'm like, oh, is this right? But I do I'm always hopefully like communicating that I'm like open to feedback, and if I'm open to admitting I'm wrong too, and like learning from it. So that also helps with any moments of like self-questioning. Just having that humility built in to the way that you operate, I have found is really helpful. And avoiding any sense of like, oh, I could be wrong. What happens then? If you kind of own that you could be wrong, and it's an opportunity if you are wrong to like continue to learn, then imposter syndrome kind of just feels like it's not, like it kind of just dissolves, I guess. So yeah, I think when I was starting out, definitely there was a little bit of a I feel like I'm learning so much, and it's hard to feel like I'm mastering this. But eventually, just getting into the swing of things, and kind of owning that you're constantly learning is something that I found very helpful.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
And Maddie, obviously it's difficult in any case, but as like a sort of senior SEO manager, and when you did have a team, did you have a way or a technique to identify when is the best time to hire? Was it just a case of like demand increase, or was it like new strategies that you were planning to implement that you need somebody else, or when do you sort of gauge when is the best time to bring on a new employee?
I think ultimately there's often people like several levels above an SEO. If you're in a big in-house in a big corporation who are deciding whether or not there's a budget for that, I think often most SEOs are trying to push for new hires. From what I can tell, constantly. I think ultimately, tying a new hire to a big business initiative or big project. So that seems like the most effective inflection point. But I think, if I could decide when to hire somebody for an SEO team, would be like right now, but I think, that's the key inflection point that I've noticed is like the most effective for pitching a new head.
Okay, excellent, love that.
On the topic of working for a bigger corporation, actually, we chat to a lot of smaller to medium agencies, and something that I think I really wanted to ask you was on the topic of company culture. When something's already so established, and you sort of like you come in, how do you sort of tackle company culture, or just culture within your own team? Yeah, how do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think just one thing that I found is just knowing what my values are and understanding like how I want to operate is often the best like beacon. And if I find myself in a situation where I'm not sure how to move forward or to communicate, like just stepping back and thinking about like, what are my values? What would I appreciate out of a coworker if I were in their situation, and going from there. So I think, it's so, company culture is so like amorphous and like hard to define. Like there are so many inputs too. I think like just focusing again on what I can control, which is me, and really just going from there. But good question, honestly. I clearly haven't thought about that super hard.
Are there any sort of like key indicators that you as like a candidate would pick up on during like the interview process with one of the new companies that you've moved to? Is there anything that really sort of like stood out to you, maybe as part of their interview process they did something a bit differently, or just some sort of background information that you found out before you applied?
Yeah, I think one thing that I always try to figure out if I'm applying for a role is just like how important is SEO for the company. I think that not only like helps you determine how effective you can be, because there's so many stakeholders that like decide whether or not your SEO strategy gets executed, but also it determines like how fun your job will be, honestly, or like fulfilling your job will be. If you work on strategies all day and you never see results for them, that's like a great way to burn out. And I found that working in-house at a place where you can you can know that your work's getting put into practice is a great feeling. I would say it's hard to tell during an interview process, though. Like, everybody's going to say SEO is important to the person interviewing for the SEO role. I think maybe asking for concrete examples of, like, if there was a previous SEO, like how they worked with other stakeholders and how stakeholders executed their strategy, or even asking, on the flip side, what have been the struggles in the past for executing SEO strategy. So really trying to get concrete instead of just asking how important it is. I found pretty effective.
Brilliant. Love it.
It's a really great way to end a webinar. Just a mic drop moment. But yeah, Maddie, that was incredible, super insightful, and great chatting to you. If anyone would like to follow Maddie, we will be popping her LinkedIn socials onto our YouTube and our LinkedIn post. So go find Maddie, and if you have any questions, I don't know if I'm sending a whole herd to you now, but fire the questions away. But yeah, Maddie, thank you so much for joining, and really appreciate you taking time out of your 3-day work week to come chat to us. And we hope to chat soon as well.
Thank you both so much. It was cool talking with you. Really had a great time. Thank you.